All right, so Naomi's joining me to talk about some of the developments on the issue of preborn human rights, which is obviously a focus for ARPA's We Need a Law campaign. Back in 2023, the organization Right Now, which is a stakeholder group of ARPA's, it's someone that we work with closely on different issues relating to preborn human rights. They actually went undercover in four different abortion clinics throughout the country, one in Vancouver, one in Alberta, in Calgary, one in Toronto, and one in Montreal. And their goal was to seek to find out if it was possible to get a late term abortion in the country at a very late stage, and to do so based on absolutely no reason at all, or simply for personal preference. Now, they indicated in their videos, so these videos were released, at least three of them were released over the last couple of weeks, which has brought quite a bit of attention. These videos, they indicate that nobody ever asked them for what their reason was. So in this case, it was Alyssa. Alyssa went in to the clinic. She was pregnant at the time, past 20 weeks, which I believe is what the late term after 20 weeks is considered late term abortion by the Abortion Rights Coalition, even. So she was in the late term stage of pregnancy. And in each case, they proceeded with moving her into the queue in that regard for a late-term abortion. So, Naomi, you've seen each of these videos. What's kind of stood out to you in terms of what was being shown?
Yeah, yeah, these videos were definitely shocking to see just how the whole process played out. It was as if Alyssa was, going into um, the dentist or something. She had a problem, she wanted it gone, and that's the same way that this was presented, that she was pregnant, and if she wanted to get an abortion, she could get one for any reason. So they didn't ask details about why she wanted to get the abortion or how she was feeling about it. Um, so it was very unsettling how simple the process was laid out for her. And they even said to her in a few of the clinics, they said if she wasn't sure, if she needed more time, she could just wait and they would refer her to the hospital down the road and she could get an even later term abortion. They were like, it's fine, we'll do an induction abortion. Um, so basically she would have to go through labor that case and deliver the dead baby. So they said, and they treated that as if that was the same. That was just fine if she wanted to go through with that. If she wanted some more time, she could still get an abortion, a very late term abortion. They did not shy away from that. Um, the other thing I noticed in the comments of the clinic workers and the abortion doctors was um, just how subtle they push the pro-choice agenda. That it's totally your decision. But you already have two kids, and maybe your kids will thrive better if there's not a third child. And there's actually a lot of benefits to society in general if we have more abortions. So things like that were very unsettling to hear. Yeah, just the way that they presented it.
Yeah, like you say, the callous way that they were talking about the procedure, of actually injecting a needle into the belly of the woman, right? And I think even one of the nurses mentioned it being called feticide, right? Which is, I mean, feticide. How much closer can you get to calling it murder? Really,
Hmm.
they're clearly ending a heartbeat. They're clearly ending the life of a human, and the only context for that is the fact that this human is still inside of its mother's belly, and so somehow that's that is good enough reason, because no other reason was given. That's good enough reason for them to proceed with this and to see it as a vital healthcare service. In one of the clinics, it might have been Vancouver, because she was talking about the fact that in this particular clinic there was a limit up to a certain number of weeks that they were willing to do the late term abortions. But like you say, that could be done somewhere else. But also that this individual could be referred to the states potentially
Yeah.
if it wasn't possible to be done in Canada. And so you have this, and I think they even mentioned the fact that this was fundamentally a needed healthcare procedure that would be funded by the government wherever it took place up to the end of the pregnancy. So just it's not something we didn't know was happening. We knew late term abortions were happening in Canada, but to see to see that and to see the ease at which that's taking place seems to contradict a lot of the other comments that are being made by government representatives, etc. So maybe comment on that a little bit, like the narrative that we've been told in regards to whether late-term abortions in Canada are happening or not.
Yeah. Yeah, I was in the same boat where I knew that late term abortions happen, but I didn't think it was this easy. And I've talked to a lot of people in activism that say, oh yeah, that like that's super rare. It only happens in rare medical circumstances, but this proved that no, it doesn't. It actually can happen a lot more easily. Um, they even said at one point, you can get a late term abortion even if you, for no reason, for any reason at all, or if you just don't want to be pregnant anymore.
Right.
So they didn't ask any details. And she said, one of the clinic workers also said that 24 to 30 weeks, it's still very possible. The system certainly doesn't think it's too far. So they kept talking about the system and whatever we're told that yeah, abortions can happen all the way up 24 to 30 weeks, whether you get it in the clinic or in the hospital, they're going to refer you. And some hospitals even have the ability to do abortions well beyond 24 weeks. They're not going to ask you why. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think that we have these assumptions, or our culture tells us that these things don't happen, um, but they can, and they
Yeah.
do happen, and they are pushed. Um, and then the other thing that they often say is, well, it might happen in rare circumstances, but it doesn't matter because the baby, they're not quite viable yet at 22 weeks. I mean, when you're talking 24 weeks, then they are, but at 22 weeks, maybe they're not. And so they're saying, yeah, then that makes it okay. Um, but they totally ignore some of the like the scientific facts about how developed the baby is at 22 weeks and how you can hear their heartbeat and you can see their little fingers and toes already at 22 weeks. So yeah, they're making
When
sure
it's not
that that
impossible
side's
for
not heard.
babies, even at that stage, to survive, right? Like I think in the video they even show a baby at that stage of pregnancy surviving outside of the womb. So it's there's a particular narrative that they want to tell about this, and that's what they're sticking to. And it's been remarkable to me seeing some of the conversations after the fact. I mean, they quote from Carolyn Bennett, who was a former cabinet minister in the Liberal government under Trudeau, and she says, "Yeah, it doesn't happen. It's something that only happens in really medical emergency situations. It's very rare, and yet." Here we have 4 examples in each case. Like not one of those clinics did someone ask more questions about what the reason was, and so we're being led to believe by the government that this is the way that these things are being done, that it's for medical emergencies, blah blah blah, and yet that doesn't seem to be part of the process by which they're actually screening people who are pursuing these. The data is also vague. I mean, up until a couple of years ago, it was difficult to get abortion statistics. Even still, it's difficult to get abortion statistics. ARPA a couple of years ago had to take the government of Ontario to court because they refused to release abortion statistics. The government of Quebec to this day still doesn't submit abortion statistics. So it's strange to me that for something, I mean, they have this problem with euthanasia as well to some degree, that there's a hesitancy to release the data because of some of the backlash that comes as a result of that. But that seems to be indicative of, if they're happy that these procedures are taking place, what are they trying to hide? That's the part of the conversation here, especially that these 4 videos really uncovers, that raises questions for me anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Like if they say they're not happening, then why can't we just legislate it, right? But then when they realize that we can see that it is happening, um, sometimes they want to shove it under the rug, but other times then they say, well, celebrate it. It is happening. That's fine. And then they stop talking about the baby. They stop talking about development. They're like, we might like we inherently know that it's a baby, but at that point it doesn't even matter. It's just all about the woman, whatever her choice is. So they just
Yep.
flip the narrative that we're not gonna talk at all about preborn human rights. We're just gonna focus on what the woman wants in that moment.
So talk a little bit about the videos for somebody who hasn't seen them. What's it like? Do you recommend people taking a look? Like, is it graphic? How for somebody who's sort of like, I don't know if I want to take a look at this. I've heard about them, but like, what's contained in them?
Right. Yeah, so the videos aren't graphic. They're showing Alyssa, so she is the one who works for right now. So she's going into these different abortion clinics and filming kind of the conversations that she has with the clinic workers. And in one or two of the circumstances, she actually talks to the abortion doctor. So she just sits down with them. She just has the camera there. The faces are blurred, and basically she's asking about the process. Um, like telling them how far along she is. So I think she does this over a span of a couple weeks. So she's 21, 22, 23 weeks pregnant. So she's telling the clinic workers that, and then they explain, okay, so if you're, that far along during your pregnancy, it's going to take a couple of days to dilate the cervix, things like that, and then we can do the procedure. If you decide we can do the procedure here, it will be a medical abortion. Or if you take a little bit more time to decide and you're not sure, we recommend you take some time to think about it. But we can certainly refer you in Toronto. They say they could refer her to the um, Women's College Hospital, so just down the road, where um, she could get that needle that we were talking about earlier. That would basically kill the fetus inside of her, and then she would deliver the baby. Or in Vancouver, they would refer her to the States. So they talk about the limits of the clinic, but then also that's not going to stop us. We'll refer you anywhere. So they describe in detail, I guess, in some detail, the process, but they're not going to refer to it as a baby. They're going to, skirt around certain language. So yeah, the videos just show what it's like talking to those clinic workers, some of the process. She asks some questions, like Alyssa asks questions like, is the baby, how developed is the baby? Can you see the different body parts? And then there too, I found it very striking how they avoided that question, and they said, well, like the doctor maybe could, but it doesn't look like a fully formed baby, just at a smaller
Yeah.
size. It
They
just
seem to be
there's like
very hesitant
some
about
human.
talking, like you, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly,
they
about
avoided
talking
that
about it
one,
in that
and
way. But also,
yeah,
particularly the concern about how the mother might react if she saw any of the body parts or the baby or anything, right? They seem to say, yeah, we'll cover that up. Like, and that was the interesting, well, interesting in sort of a negative way. That was the interesting part of the fact that they were talking about these different procedures. That there's up to a certain number of weeks they can still do sort of the regular abortion procedure, and then after that it has to be more or less a regular delivery where they're inducing labor, but they first stop the heartbeat of the child. And it seemed to be primarily in that second instance that they were concerned about how the mother might react in seeing body parts or the baby being born, right? But as a stillborn, and well, that was the interesting part too about the statistics conversation, was the fact that they indicated that those abortions would actually be registered as stillborn, right?
yeah,
Uh, so that in and of itself also affects the way these statistics are recorded. And maybe the
totally,
numbers are higher than we know.
yeah, totally.
After the after the videos were released, the National Post ran a front page story on these videos over the weekend, which was quite something. With I think there was two articles actually shown. Um, what does that tell you about kind of, or maybe where do you think that could go from here? Obviously front page news is a big deal, but the reality of news media is the fact that it turns over and 2 days later the story's gone, right? How do you think this news story could continue, and how can we help that continue?
Yeah, yeah, it was definitely significant that it made the front page, and right away I thought this shows that the pro-abortion side likes to say the debate is closed. Like everyone agrees abortion through all 9 months is a great thing for Canada. But seeing people talking about this, having it on the front page, having a lot of comments, if you read the comments, people are debating. Clearly, this showed that the debate is not closed. Um, People are still talking about it. People were misinformed. Like lots of Canadians don't know that late-term abortions are legal, that they're happening. Also, that
Mm-hmm.
Canada actually has no abortion laws at all. So um, I think, yeah, the articles did a lot to just inform people about this reality, and then may have shown that people are still thinking that, okay, well, if this is happening, is this right? Like there has to be a line somewhere. Like that looks like a pretty developed baby. So even if, even if they're pro-choice or even if they like the idea of a woman having a choice, they're a little bit hesitant about it, which yeah, obviously proves their whole argument isn't right from the very beginning. But I think that moving forward, I think we could use the fact that the media is talking about this. The media um, often won't portray any of the pro-life side. So the fact that they're at least talking about this is something that we want to keep it in the media, like keep sharing these stories, keep writing, letters to the editor, keep sharing it, posting it on social media, getting the word out there that this is happening and late term abortions are happening in our country more often than we think without a medical reason. Um, and yeah, I think it just signals that the whole culture is still uncertain about this ever since, even since after Roe v. Wade in the States was overturned. People have been talking about it more. So we can keep the conversation going and use this as an opportunity to bring up the fact again that we don't have any abortion laws at all. Just keep reiterating that. And then hopefully by telling people about those facts and saying that Canada is actually not in line with the international standard, most other countries are against late term abortions or at least have counseling or a waiting period, things like that, that we want to use this story to make people aware of actually how bad it is in Canada, the lack of restrictions that we have at all. And then, yeah, hopefully that can continue the conversation.
Yeah, it just exposes the reality that I think most people would prefer not to face. And I think looking at Chris Selly's article, for instance, in the National Post too, yesterday or the day before, that while I don't agree with his position because he kind of comes to this conclusion of, well, it's happening, so whatever. But he points out some of the dichotomy that exists within the debate, which we've already talked about briefly, but that the other side, the pro-choice advocates seem to be happy with allowing abortion right up to the end. And I mean, the government of Quebec recently found out that it was difficult. I think someone had complained that it was difficult to get late-term abortions in Quebec, and so they actually made it a policy that late-term abortion had to be offered somewhere within the province of Quebec. So up until that point, I think previously they had done referrals out to the United States for late-term abortions, and so his argument was, well, we need to be able to offer this at home. So presumably that's now happened, but yet when this is shown, when videos like this are shown, there seems to be an automatic reaction again from people that, oh, this doesn't happen very often, or whatever. And even in response to the front page National Post article, some of the responses that you could see on Twitter and things like that were from people who clearly hadn't watched Alyssa's videos, but were reacting and saying, this article from the National Post is fake news. They're talking about something that never happens. This is, abortions for no reason at all at a late-term stage just don't happen. And yet, again, the videos show the reality of this. So I think it exposes a dichotomy in the conversation, the fact that the pro-choice advocates and their talking points exist on people being ignorant of the facts of the reality of what's going on in Canada. And so for us, the key thing is to continue to expose that. And so that's why I think I have a lot of appreciation for Right Now and for the work they did on this. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of I can't imagine being in Alyssa's shoes, being pregnant,
Yeah.
talking about your unborn child in that way in a clinic is a challenging thing to do, and yet here we are able to have a bit of a conversation about this nationally. So,
Yeah.
hats off to them for doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. People are you can see in with the articles with the responses to that people are scared of any reaction of them finding out that late term abortions happen, so they switch right back to what you said. They switch back to, oh, this actually doesn't happen. This is all fake news because um it's like what Joyce Arthur said, one of the abortion rights activists, that any recognition of the preborn, it will bleed into the consciousness of people and will, they're going to start protecting the preborn somewhere. So we don't want to draw that line anywhere. So let's just not talk about it at all, even if abortions are happening up till birth. So
Yeah.
yeah, but like what you said, it's like we need to keep bringing this, making this front and center because this is happening. And then people will start to become more and more aware that, okay, there's got to be a line somewhere. Ultimately, we want the line to be at the very beginning. We want all preborn children to be protected, but at least the conversation is being started that, abortions right up until birth should not be happening.
Yeah, and that's why, like you say, that's why people like Joyce are fighting as hard as they are to ensure that the line doesn't move anywhere, right? And so when we
Yeah.
see other, little conversations in provinces about, like, even in Alberta, the UCP potentially, bringing a policy decision forward on this, or the Conservative Party of Canada bringing a policy decision to maybe change their stance on abortion, whatever, right away you have people jumping on that, even people who don't support either of those parties, to try and ensure that that line doesn't get crossed. And so it just further shows the reality of the crumbling foundation that they're standing on in terms of the logic that backs up the pro-choice perspective, and the fact that science, and the more detailed, the more we know about human life and human life in the womb, the more tenuous their arguments about ending that life become. And
Mhm.
so it's up to us to continue ensuring that that conversation happens.
Mhm.
What can people do? You mentioned earlier about some things that people can do to continue that conversation.
Yeah, definitely. I think that people can share the videos if they can go to It Starts Right Now, to see the videos, to share them on their own social media in their own circles, and also to send these videos to their member of parliament to let them know that, this is something that Canadians are talking about, explaining why we need a law against abortion. Um, yeah, so sharing it around, continuing the conversation, even just commenting on the videos or on the social media posts can help to get more views. So commenting, sharing, and on the National Post articles too, writing responses, writing comments to those, showing that, there are lots of pro-life Canadians out there. That the pro-choice side likes to say that, um, our laws reflect the majority of what Canadians believe, but that's actually not true. It's like around 70% of Canadians are against third trimester abortions. So, we need to represent those. We need to encourage them to speak up. Um, so sharing it, within your circles, outside of your circles, with your member of parliament, and and then also offering, not just exposing this, but also offering solutions. Like we've talked in We Need a Law about having an international standards law. So okay, what could a first step be in terms of stopping abortions and getting a law against it? Maybe an international standards law or some gestational limits. Talking about that maybe with your member of parliament. That, yeah, we know that stepping into the abortion debate is probably very scary in a very pro-choice government, but we can take these steps to start to protect them in small ways. And actually, there's a lot of Canadians that would support it. So yeah.
Yeah, so those are the next steps in terms of moving this into the future, into 2026, et cetera, is to start having those conversations. And so you can help us too, with doing that by, as Naomi already pointed out, by sending those messages to your member of parliament, to your MLA or your MPP provincially, and just letting them know that this is happening in Canada, and ask them what they're going to do about it. So we'll have some more resources about that, some things that you can do to support this initiative as well. But Naomi, thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.